sometimes the cover and the title can be the big difference. And the whole idea about don't judge a book by the cover may be true in a metaphorical sense, but it certainly isn't true from the buyer's point of view. And if you're publishing books, you want people to buy them. It's as simple as that. And so therefore it isn't true that you can judge a book by the cover. And talking of which, then we come to, I guess, one of my personal most useful books is Tarot Flip. This is a book that I always have by my side, and I use this for self-reading quite often. If I want absolute unbiased advice, I just actually have a vow to use exactly the keyword that is given in Tarot Flip. And a lot of work and a lot of research went into this, but it's actually just a simple book of keywords, and that is all it is. But this is a massive powerhouse of hundreds of tarot card readers and tens of thousands of real readings, all condensed and filtered and titrated into this book. And Tali had the idea of Tarot Flip and having these ambigrams. So Flip Tarot, they read always the same, upright and reversed. And this was a little sequence of books we called the Terosophy Kickstart books, and this was before Kickstarter started to really take off as well. But Tali wanted the idea of them being a Kickstart thing that you could just open it and literally learn to read tarot cards straight from the box. So you get your tarot deck, you get this book, you open it, and it tells you how to read it, tells you what to say, and it's just a very little powerhouse book, but it's the one I use most often from a practical sense, unless I'm actually doing ritual work, in which case I use the books with ritual stuff in them. Then what else have we got? So our favourite book, and my favourite book as well, is Abiding in the Sanctuary, because of the story behind this, because all of the weird occult and magical stuff that went along with the writing of this, because of the discovery of the Waite Trinic deck itself, and the way things just started to come together for it, which we explore. This is where we hide heaven, is my section, and I can't remember what Tyler's was called. Primary Source, I think. Yeah, Primary Source. And Mary Kay Greer wrote a foreword for this, The Grace Which Abides. And this is my favourite book because, again, it's our most mystical book. We're expanding on this at the moment, but this is the Waite Trinic deck, but it shows what Arthur Edward Waite was actually trying to achieve with tarot, way beyond the Waite-Smith deck itself. And the artwork is just gorgeous, and there's the Blasted Tower, and mystical, and this book costs a fortune to produce. We have it print on demand, and we still have copies of it available, but to do it on full luster paper in colour, it doesn't look that much, but we hardly make anything on this book, even though it's quite expensive to purchase because of the actual cost of shipping it and producing it in full colour in this lustered manner, which just, we wanted the experience of when you opened it for it to be almost like you were seeing it gaslit from a Victorian parlour when it was originally painted. And so we experimented a lot with the layout and because we just wanted these images to really shine through. This is referring to the next card. This is the High Priestess that we see drawing down the moon there, way ahead of Gerald Gardner talking about it. That's Abiding in the Sanctuary. And you can see, again, in terms of the behind-the-scenes stuff, I experimented a lot, just had test versions done, just so I could check how the paper worked with it, and so forth. And again, very expensive to try messing around with different ways of producing a book for self-publications. That's the actual original book from which some of the images come, called The Great Symbols of the Past, that's in the British Museum, that Tarly rediscovered. And we both signed this version with What the Hell We Were Thinking and Here's to Seeing Beyond the Now. And that was in 2011 while we were still working on it, and it was proving almost too difficult to publish for all sorts of reasons. So where were we? So let's have a look just briefly at how a book gets translated. Basically, as an author, you have nothing to do with that. The publisher touts it around, receives offers of interest from different publishers that they're in touch with. They get a decent translator who has to know a lot about the background of tarot, and I've actually met one of the Japanese translators now at the Tarot Tokyo Museum, and we had a nice discussion about how one is able to translate English into Japanese, and then the layout obviously has to then match the language and the layout of the language itself. I particularly like, there's an Italian version of, I think it's of Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot. This is the Japanese version of Secrets of, and the Italian layout is really nice. It's a Lo Scarabeo publication, and it's a really nice layout. And you can see sometimes how the layout is affected by the language itself. We've got some of our books translated into Russian, into Japanese, into Italian, into other languages as well. And then basically you get in effect a rights. I don't know what the official term for it is, but it's a payment for having sold the rights, because there's a one-off payment made, and then you get a sort of residual fee from the sales of the book as well, even though it's a lot less than in the original language. So again, you have very little to do with that, but it's very nice to see it when it happens, that there's interest elsewhere in a book. Okay, so I've not really talked about self-publishing too much, although we do have a lot of books that are self-published. For example, Secrets of the Thoth Tarot, and here I decided to self-publish it because we were already doing so much work with publishers that this just became easier to self-publish. Also, I didn't have the rights and couldn't get the rights from the OTO despite asking them to reprint the Thoth Tarot within it, so there was little point in approaching publishers in the sense of they would want the illustrations of the cards to go with it. But as a self-published venture, it allowed me to put all of my research and stuff and get that out there to anyone interested in the real detail in each of the cards and the symbolism. And also I wanted to make sure that it had in a reading the practical application of all of that information in actual readings, how I use it in actual readings of the Thoth Tarot. And that's in 3 volumes. Now, we're going to end with one of our biggest books, and it's one that is credited to Tarly, myself, and Charlotte Louise, because we did all of the work on it. But we actually did this with members of our occult order, the Order of Everlasting Day, and we did this over a year daily. We had developed in effect, a language and communication with the angels of the days. And these are unique. They're unique to the days. They don't exist in any other grimoire or anything. These are contacted by our order and communicated with and brought into everyday life. And we did it over a year every day, and we shared our findings on Facebook in our private group for the occult order. And then we decided that it would be interesting to publish it, and Tolly did a load of work on the personages that apply to each day, people born on that day, so you could really find your, like a birthday book. When you look in a birthday book, people born on the same day as you, oh, it was Winston Churchill, that's interesting, and that sort of thing. But we actually found that the people born on the day of the angel matched very well, not only the angel, but the correspondences to that angel through tarot. And Charlotte did a lot of work on the psychological blocks, the psychological challenges and resources that you could work with each angel. You'll notice the font here is, I think it's Felix Teitling with an extended line in that. That is to go back to Teosophy and the Zosso symbol, which obviously is a nod to Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page with the Zosso symbol, which is actually an old alchemical symbol, long story. And so Gregorian Angels we then did for another year, again daily, writing every single day, extending the writing that we'd done in the first year. So there was a year gap, I think, 6 months gap, and then we started it again. And we wrote and wrote and wrote. And it's dedicated to the members of the order at the time. And this is a first test print. Obviously, it's got not for resale on it, a draft print. And it has the sigils. It has a layout. It has how you block the presence of each day and so forth. And this was just mainly a test to actually see the size of the font and the size of the book, because each angel needs to go on its own day, or each month needs splitting out for use. So this was a massive piece of work, huge piece of work, real magical order, real people in it, doing real occult magical work every single day, a whole group of us for a year, then taking a bit of a break, and then doing it for another year, every single day, without fail. We wrote something in the second run through. Every single day we wrote a page each, we wrote a paragraph each, we wrote something, and the people in the group added to it and so forth, and we tweaked it and tested it and experienced it, and it was transformative. And some of the days are absolutely bonkers if you follow this through as a working or even as a daily ritual or anything. And then eventually, if you thought that was a big book, then there is the other version, the actual printed version, and you can see that I had to make it a bit bigger in the final version. And so this is Gregorian Angels, including a compendium of the Greater Assembly of Gregorian Angels, and it's book 366, a Class AB publication of the Order of Everlasting Day. This is our first real occult book from our magical order, and you can see, hopefully I've learned some things from previous books. For example, here we have the date on every page, so you can find out March, and then you can find the week in March. So actually, let's have a look. It's Friday the 10th of January, so let's take a look. And it's in order from September for ritual working. So let's have a look at January the 10th we're on. Let's have a look at what the angel of the day is. This was originally going to be a big birthday book of angels, but we were told by the publisher we approached for that, when it was going to be far less of an occult work and more general work, that unless they could sell 100,000 copies, they weren't interested, and they didn't think they could sell 100,000 copies of it. They might be able to sell 10,000, but not 100,000. That was their bare minimum. So they rejected it as an idea. But the idea was actually far more occult, and we were going to step it down a little bit for more public consumption. So in them rejecting it, it did give us the opportunity to actually then work on it and publish it as an actual grimoire. This is a real brand new modern day grimoire based on very old correspondences. So the let's have a look. So you've got the 10th of January, and you can see there's roughly a page, and we had these angelic dividers in it. And let me just read out what the angel of today is. It's Ayayal, which is impulse withdrawing. Their presence is illustrated by the devil and the hermit. The letters are Ayin and Yod. And the angel of today is a small orb of darkness that floats about a singular halo of light, which in turn appears to surround a point of emptiness. In a sense, Ayayal, which is difficult to pronounce, represents the seed state of creation. There was a space made in everything for a nothing to exist, then the nothing became something. The light entered the darkness, so the darkness comprehendeth it not. This presence also reminds us of the story of the temptation of Christ in the wilderness. To create, we must withdraw. We must recognize an emptiness that we want to change into something. Perhaps yesterday, our attention holding, which was the angel of the previous day, because there's a whole chain of angels that you can make as well for particular ritual work. Attention holding was to prepare for today, as we see throughout this chain of angels. And today is to prepare us for tomorrow, which is darkness freeing. The birthday qualities. If you're born on the 10th of January, those born on this day will cultivate withdrawal and solitude, and must be aware if this leads to negative thinking. They benefit from engaging with the world on their own terms and making their own way. And on this day was born, and we've called this temptation of the spirit, on this day was born Hendrik Nicholas in 1501, a German mystic who first experienced visions as a child, and in adulthood at the age of 27. His beliefs led to a period of imprisonment for heresy. Hence he fits the angel of the day impulse withdrawing. An affirmation to affirm this present state: I react not to temptation, to welcome the presence in your life, to block it. And there's an oracle of the angel. So if you open the book, any particular page using bibliomancy, or you want an oracle for the day, there's an oracle from each angel. And today is, you may find yourself in a double bind today, faced with a dilemma. You may be damned if you do and damned if you don't. So the wise thing to do is to withdraw and take no action, which is sort of a very useful oracle, strangely enough, for my particular work today in writing and so forth. So that's the Gregorian Angels. And again, it's our most massive book, the book that we put so much work into and so forth. And I don't think anyone buys it. I don't know how many sales we have of it. It's self-published, and so again, you can't really tell what's going to work, what isn't, but to me, I think the important thing, and I know to Tarlene, to Charlotte, it's you work on the things that interest you, and don't ever think just because other people have published books on the tarot that you've got nothing to say on the matter, or on ritual, or on magic, or shamanism, or whatever topic you are passionate about. Then if you do want to write about it, then write about it. If you do want to self-publish, be aware of all of the things about self-publishing, and if you've got any questions, just ask below. If you want to go to a publisher, read their guidelines. That's all you need to do. Your job as an author is to provide the publisher what they want to publish, what they think will sell, what they think is good for their business or their brand. And so it's important to really read the guidelines and fit to them. And yeah, you can have a discussion with publishers, some more than others. Some publishers will want you to do far more marketing than you might expect, so be aware of that. And I think some publishers of late have been looking at people with large social media followings, and that was a big thing about getting a contract. Perhaps that's my guesstimate from the outside, but I think that has sort of come full circle a little bit, because having a large social media presence doesn't necessarily make you a good author, a working author, a interesting author, or anything else. It just means you're good at marketing, perhaps, or you've looked into a particular niche, or whatever it might be. And I think the publishers are now circling back to far more quality, hard-working authors that are doing it with a lot of experience and understand the professionalism of writing as an actual job, rather than just necessarily having a big social media presence, although that helps massively, of course, and is something that is almost expected, I guess, for a lot of people, although there are a lot of niche occult publishers whose authors don't really have a big social media presence, but they do have perhaps byways to larger occult influencers. I don't like that phrase at all, but or they have a lot of respect within their particular field of expertise, so you can work with that as well. Basically, it's a case of incorporating and utilising who you are, what you've got, what style of writing you do, and so forth. So every author's story is always going to be different. I am reminded of, I think it was an author who said that there are 3 circles that you need to really cover, and you can fail in one as long as you are okay in the others, and the other 2. And it's be likable, be on time, and produce good content. So be likable, be on time, and produce good content, the 3 things. So you can be really unlikable, but if you're on time and produce good content, that's fine. You can not produce good content, but be really likable and likely have a big social media following and be on time, and that's okay as well. So it's best to try and aim roughly in the middle of all 3 of those things. Be generally likable and be able to work with the publisher, be friendly, open, responsive, adaptable, I think is the best word for it. To pitch that somewhere in the middle if you can, or right at the top. Don't be totally roll over, you do with my book what you want, I don't care, because you must care, you should care. Be on time, and try and be on time, but also try and produce good content within the time, and be realistic about time as well. It's interesting that sometimes an author or someone whose name gets put onto the front of a book might be very hyped in the beginning, and they'll only ever publish 1 book, and that's likely because of a failure of one of those things in the background. They produced not very good content and not been likable or adaptable, or they've not been on time and not produced very good content, or have been just unlikable, not produced good content, and it wasn't on time. And quite often that author's name can still get on the front of a book, but it's likely to only ever be 1 book, because behind the scenes it might have been heavily edited, heavily rewritten, and the printing schedules, which are always in a year and a half in advance. I used to work for a publisher of educational books in England. I worked there for several years on data analysis, and so a lot of our work was on working out how many books needed to be written for a year and a half in advance, and we had to have the whole printing chain in reverse, of course. So we had to have these massive spreadsheets and databases to work out what sort of maths books or English books or history books would be required by the UK school population in 2 years' time, in order to get those printed in advance, in order to get them delivered in advance, in order to get the manuscripts written in advance, all the way back down that chain. It's a very long pipeline, and the books that are being written now are for the thing that's going to be popular in 2 years' time. If you're thinking about writing a book now for something that's popular, you are too late. Those books were written 2 years ago. And so, again, you have to be thinking slightly ahead of yourself as to where the market might be. And again, that's more of an art, even though we did try and turn it into a bit of a science within the small niche of educational books. And I'm sure in occultism and in esoteric books, there's a similar pipeline. There is with the publishers. They've already started to work out the marketing of the book that was submitted last year in order to be announcing it and selling it later this year. Our current book, which we've got 7 days remaining to submit, and hence why I thought I'd talk about publishing, because I don't have time to deliver a usual video, I guess. That our book that we will finish in 7 days' time was actually shunted slightly because we felt that the market wasn't ready for it. The publishers also suggested that to us as well, and it gave us a lot of extra time to write it, which was useful because we have 30, 60, 80 books between Tolly Goodwin and I on the floor and everywhere else that we're using for the in-depth research of that book. We've been writing it on and off for about 8 years, and that we've been writing it more consistently for the last 2 years since we got the contract, and we are writing it like 24 hours a day at the moment, hence why this is a more informal video this week, because every minute in the final stages of a book is a moment where inside your head you're thinking that book could be better before it gets submitted. That book could be a bit better. There could be a bit better, not necessarily more in it, but you could tweak something, you could tighten something, you could reference something, you could add a new table that would help explain something. All of these thoughts are cascading into a head that is full of the book at the moment. All of the research over the last 8 years. Have we still got that in the book? I can't remember. The book is too big now, and so forth. And at the stage where the book starts to take shape is also the stage where you see the impossible gaps to fill, and your head is so full of it that you can't hold it inside your head. So the last 10 days of a book deadline, horrible, absolutely horrendous, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But if you do want to work in publishing, if you do want to be a jobbing author, then don't let rejection letters put you off. Use them as education. Find your own voice, find your own niche, find your own preferred publisher if you can, or work on self-publishing and do a good job with it. Do the best job you can with it. That's all you need to do. There's nothing wrong with self-publishing. I think it's a very good way of delivering certain information. We have several books that are our Andrea Green books, for example. This book, which is our pseudonym, and this is the German version, translated by Steph Engert, Cabal and Tarot, a step-up guide. And yeah, so this is a German self-published book, and it's unlikely it would find a big audience because it's quite specialised in Cabal and Tarot, and it's an absolute beginner's book. So the best way of doing that was self-publishing. There was no question about it, because finding a German publishing house that would be interested in it and want to use our exact text the way we wanted it, and Steph's translation of it, they might want their own translator and so on, who might not have the same approach to Cabal and Tarot that Steph has as a long friend and someone we work with a lot. So again, self-publishing is sometimes exactly the right answer for a book, and sometimes a publisher might be interested, in which case be adaptable, work with them, deliver something on time, write it well, and be nice about it, which is a message I'm giving to myself, so I can now go and try and do that for Llewellyn, who, again, every time I walk into this room, I have a wry smile on my face that I didn't let one letter put me off a long, long time ago now, because we change over time. So thanks a lot for listening. If you've got any questions, drop them below. If you'd like me to expand on anything about authorship, writing, the occult publishing world, I will try and answer if I can. It'd be a pleasure to do so. So thanks a lot, and until next time, as ever, the worker is really working hard and hidden in the workshop.